Welcome to NDR's Signal Exchange, your go-to source for insights on the markets and economy. In just a few minutes, we'll answer your top questions and cover key trends shaping the financial landscape. Today, what I want to highlight is the three keys to thematic investing. The first thing I want you to know about thematic investing is that thematic stocks are often seen as a long-duration asset. And what I mean by that is these companies will require a significant amount of time to see good returns on investment. Now think about, for example, traditional energy versus clean energy. With oil, you pull it out of the ground, you refine it, you sell the refined product, and you get paid for it. You get a return right away, in weeks, if not days. That's not the case with clean energy. It can take months to build a wind farm, for example. First, you have the expense of the purchase of wind turbines. Then you have to get the approval where to put the wind turbines, install them, and then you'll need to get contracts of customers willing to buy the electricity from the wind farms. And then further down the road, as the income comes in, you'll exceed the expense and the return on assets will improve. Again, it's a longer duration asset. It takes a longer time to see your returns. And that brings me to point number 2. Beware of the volatility of thematic investing. While many themes are long duration assets, many investors are not long-term investors. And so this creates volatility in the stocks. Investors want to time the purchase of these stocks just as a company's new technology is taking off. But there's often uneven progress with the new technologies. And what I call the fast money can leave these investments rather quickly on disappointing news, and that creates the volatility. The other thing I see is creating volatility is that risk appetite itself is volatile. Many of the thematic stocks do not have profits, and some of them don't even have meaningful revenues. So it takes a good risk-on environment for many of these themes to remain in favor. Tim Hayes, NDR's chief investment strategist, closely tracks risk-on versus risk-off so we can know what kind of an environment we're in. He's created both a risk-on index and a risk-off index to help with this. The risk-on index includes things like S&P 500 technology, consumer discretionary, and industrial metals. The risk-off index includes things like S&P 500 consumer staples, utilities, and insurance. Let's look now at a chart that shows one of the most well-known high-risk assets out there, Bitcoin. And in this chart, in the bottom clip, we plot the ratio of the risk-on to risk-off indexes, or what we call the RoRo index for short. And then we look to see how the RoRo index is doing versus the 200-day moving average. When it's above its 200-day moving average, we say we're in a more risk-on environment, and when it's below, more risk-off. Interestingly, the RoRo index recently crossed above its 200-day moving average, and this has historically been very bullish for Bitcoin. You can see that going back to 2010, when our price data for Bitcoin started, Bitcoin has gained at a rate of 282.5% annually, and when the RoRo ratio is below its 200-day moving average, it's declined by 3.7% annually, so quite a dramatic difference. Another way to measure risk appetite is to simply look at the percentage of themes that are outperforming the S&P 500. Now we track 48 themes using ETFs, and in the top clip here on this chart, I'm showing you with the green bar that 30 of those 48 themes are outperforming the S&P 500 by more than 1%. The blue square says that's 63% of themes outperforming. Note that this is a very high level historically, and in the last 10 years, only 2020 has seen a better year. So as you can see, between the RoRo index turning bullish and the large percent of themes outperforming, it looks like a very good environment for thematic investing. Okay, so let's talk about my third point now, which is that we must know where the theme is in its adoption stage. And so this very much relates to volatility too. A great framework to think about themes in their adoption phase is to plot them on the technology S-curve. This S-curve was made well known by Everett Rogers in 1962, and it highlights the phase and speed of adoption that a new technology can go through. You can see on the chart that I'm showing you now here from Global X that plots themes on the S-curve, the adoption phases going from left to right go from early to late adoption. In thematic investing, it's critical to know which phase your theme is in. The further left you are on this chart, the longer the duration and the more volatile your theme is likely to be. You may even have a negative beta to the S&P 500 in this early adoption phase. But as you go more to the right, the theme becomes less volatile, but we expect lower returns in this case as well. Remember, investors always want to be compensated for risk. So the more to the left, the higher the risk, and higher returns. And the more to the right, the lower the risk, the lower returns. All right, so let's look at some examples of themes and discuss where they are in the adoption phase. Let's start with genomics. We see this theme going from the innovators to early adopters phase. The field of gene editing looks very promising. The ability to use CRISPR technology to cut and paste a defective gene with a good one to cure genetic diseases looks like an amazing technology. But we're still looking for more proven drugs from this field, so it remains in an early stage and thus very volatile. Just to highlight its volatility, the chart I'm showing you now is a price chart from the Global X Genomics and Biotech ETF. And over the past 6 years, you'll see that this chart has had 11 corrections of 15% or more. Compare that to the S&P 500, which has had just 4 corrections of 15% or more the past 6 years, and you get a feel for the volatility. Again, the earlier the adoption, the more volatile. Now, let's highlight a theme that's a little farther along in its adoption phase, and that's online sports betting. Online sports betting has been legalized in 30 states, and so it's heading up the early majority phase. By the way, we think this is the sweet spot of thematic investing as you go from this early adopters to early majority phase with a proven concept. So while 30 states have legalized online sports betting, the 3 largest states, California, Texas, and Florida, have not. So we're still a good ways away to reach the late majority phase here. Again, good opportunity ahead for this theme. Okay, one last theme that's heading up the early majority phase that's farther along than even sports betting is cybersecurity. I distinctly remember in May of 2021 when the Colonial Pipeline Company operations were shut down almost a week and held for ransom. This was a watershed moment that let all businesses know they needed cybersecurity, not just IT companies. And the cybersecurity theme has outperformed the S&P 500 by about 5% annually since then. Okay, so just to recap, the 3 key things to keep in mind with thematic investing. Number 1, you are dealing with a long duration assets. Number 2, you're dealing with very volatile assets. And number 3, where you are in the adoption phase will impact the volatility and expected returns. Of course, we want to help clients understand where these themes are in the adoption process and help with the timing of purchases and selling of thematic ETFs. So please look for our weekly topic publications and our monthly updates. If you have more questions or want deeper analysis, feel free to submit your own for our next episode by emailing neddavisresearch@ndr.com. Thanks for watching NDR Signal Exchange. Let NDR help you see the signals.